If you're a Taurus sun, you've probably been called stubborn, lazy, materialistic, possessive, inflexible, and boring so many times that people treat your entire personality like it's one long, slow refusal to evolve while hoarding resources and resisting change. They may act like your stability is being rigid, your sensory awareness is materialism, and your patience is just a lack of ambition. But here's what they're missing. Your sun sign isn't a failure to grow or adapt. It's your developmental assignment, shaped by the seasonal conditions you were born into. You see, Taurus season falls into mid-spring, roughly April 20th through May 20th, when explosive early growth has to slow down, stabilize, root deeply, and build the foundation that will sustain the plant through summer's demands and eventual harvest. See, this isn't about being stuck or unmotivated. It's about being born into the season that teaches stability, resource cultivation, sensory wisdom, and the specific kind of intelligence that comes from understanding that sustainable growth requires deep roots, patient development, and the ability to build what lasts. So, what people call Taurus traits are actually mid spring stabilization strategies. Let's set the record straight. If your sun is in Taurus, here are 10 things people get wrong about you. Number one, people think you're stubborn when you're actually maintaining the stability that sustains growth. You see, the stubbornness accusation is what Taurus hears constantly, and it fundamentally, I think, misreads your nature. You're not stubborn, you're steady. Mid spring can afford consistent change. After the explosive breakthrough of early spring, growth needs to stabilize. Plants need to root deeply, establish strong stems, and build structures that will hold them through the entire season, and that requires not moving. So when you hold your ground, you're not being difficult, you're providing stability. You see, you've tested what works, you built systems that function, and you're not going to abandon them because somebody wants novelty, right? Change for its own sake. It disrupts growth. You will change when there's a legitimate reason. Otherwise, you're gonna maintain what's working. If it ain't broke, you're not about to. You're not. If it ain't broke, if it's not, yeah. Can't remember the saying. If it's not broke, you're not about to like fix it. For some reason, that sounds wrong, but I think that is right. Anyway, um, but yeah, the people who call you stubborn, they usually need more external stimulation than you do, and they'll interpret your stability as resistance. They'll think that if you're not constantly changing, you're stuck, but you're not stuck. You're rooted. What they call stubborn is actually you providing a stable foundation that makes sustained growth possible. Number two, people think you're lazy when you're actually conserving energy for sustained output. You see, I think lazy actually completely misreads your relationship with energy because you're not lazy, you're efficient. You see, mid spring can't burn energy the way the early spring does, right? After the explosive push to break through the ground, the plants, they need to conserve energy for the long process of developing roots, leaves, and eventually flowers and fruit. So you operate the same way, you just conserve your energy for sustainable output. You don't see the point in constant motion. Like all that moving around, you like ain't got it to do. You move when movement is needed. Otherwise, you're gonna rest and build reserves. You work hard when working matters. You're not trying to just look busy to be cute. You're trying to be effective. That means knowing when to act and when to conserve. So your stillness isn't laziness, it's strategic energy management. The people who call you lazy, they probably usually equate activity with productivity. They may need to be constantly doing something just to feel valuable when you know that rest is as productive as action. So, what they call lazy is actually you understanding that sustainable output requires regular restoration. Number three, people think you're materialistic when you're actually honoring physical reality as the foundation of existence. You see, materialistic implies that you're shallow and you only care about stuff. But you're not shallow. You're grounded in physical reality. You see, mid spring is when growth becomes tangible. The leaves emerge, the stems thicken, the roots spread. Everything becomes substantial and material, and you honor that same physicality. You understand that material reality matters because we live in bodies in a physical world. So you appreciate quality, beauty, and comfort and resources, not because there's some status symbols but because they affect your actual lived experience of being an actual physical body in an actual physical world. You know what I'm saying? So a comfortable chair matters because you sit in it, right? Good food matters because you eat it, right? Beautiful surroundings matter because you're experiencing them through your senses. And that's not materialistic or materialism, that's sensory intelligence. So the people who call you materialistic, they probably usually distrust physical pleasure or think that spirituality requires rejecting material comfort. They may think that caring about physical experience is superficial. And you know that embodiment is sacred and that tending to physical needs is wisdom, not weakness. So, what they call materialistic could actually be you honoring the body and senses as valid sources of knowledge. Number four, people think you're possessive when you're actually protecting resources you cultivated. You see, I think possessiveness, it kind of suggests that you're controlling and insecure, but you're not trying to control anyone. You ain't got to do. You're protecting what you built instead. Mid spring is when plants have to protect their growth from being damaged or consumed before they're actually strong enough to withstand it. And you do the same. You've invested time, energy, and resources into creating stability, so you want to protect that investment. So when you hold on to relationships or possessions or systems, you're not necessarily being clingy, you're being protective of what matters to you. You don't accumulate randomly, you cultivate carefully what you have. You've tended and built, and you're not going to let it be carelessly damaged or taken. That's not possessiveness. I think that's stewardship. So the people who call you possessive usually may have a looser attachment to things and relationships, and they may interpret your investment as neediness. They may think that if you care about keeping what you have, that you got to be insecure. But you're not insecure. You're protective of what you cultivated. So what they call possessiveness is actually you practicing responsible stewardship of resources in my eyes. Number five, people think you're inflexible when you're actually committed to processes that requires consistency. You see, inflexible suggests you can adapt, but you can adapt. You just don't adapt quickly or unnecessarily because mid-spring growth requires consistency. You can't change growing conditions every day and expect the plants to thrive, right? They need steady conditions in order to develop properly and grow as plants. And you work the same way. You commit to processes and follow them consistently because that's how you build what lasts. So when you resist changing course, you're not being rigid, you're honoring that time investment required for actual meaningful development. You've started something. You need to see it through. Jumping to something new before finishing what you just started, it kind of wastes all the energy you've already invested. So you're not inflexible, you're just committed to completing what you begin. So the people who call you inflexible, I think they usually may just have a little shorter attention span, like me, may abandon things before they mature. They may mistake your consistency for an inability to change, but you do change all the time. You just change slowly and deliberately. So what they call inflexible is actually you understanding that real growth requires sustained commitment, not just like constant pivoting. Number six, people think you are slow when you're actually at the pace required for deep development. See, slow, it's not an insult. That's your natural pace, and it's appropriate for what you're building. A turtle's not gonna get upset because you called it. Like turtle, not even gonna care. It's not even gonna, it ain't gonna have to do. It's not even know what you're saying to it. You know, mid-spring growth, it doesn't rush. Roots, they develop slowly underground, right? The cell's wall thickening gradually. The leaves, they unfold at their own pace. You can't force those processes without damaging those things, right? And you kind of work in that same pace. You develop slowly because you're building deep foundations. So when you're taking your time or making choices or completing your work, you're not procrastinating. You're processing thoroughly. You're considering all angles, testing all options, and letting understanding develop before you fully commit. And that takes time. Rushing, it leads to weak foundations and to shoddy work. And you'd rather be slow and solid than fast and flimsy. So the people who call you slow, they usually prioritize speed over quality. They may want quick results and they may not appreciate depth. You know that everything worth building takes time. So what they call slow is actually you operating at the pace that ensures quality, depth, and permanence. Number seven. That's on my eye, sorry. People think you're resistant to change when you're actually requiring that change proves its value before it disrupts stability. See, I think resistant to change, I think it kind of suggests that you're afraid or you're closed minded, but you're not afraid of change. You're appropriately cautious about it because mid spring can't afford frivolous disruption. Plants that have rooted and begun growing, they need stable conditions, and constant change damages development. And you work and you apply the same standard to change in your life. It has to be worth the disruption it causes. So when you resist change, you're actually asking legitimate questions, right? You're actually, is this actually better? Is the improvement worth destabilizing what's working? Will this serve long term goals or just satisfy short term restlessness? Because you're not closed to new things. You're requiring that new things prove themselves before you abandon proven systems. And the people who resist your resistance, I think they usually love change for its own sake, probably. Or maybe they've never built anything substantial enough to be disrupted by it. They may think that openness to change is always positive, but you know that discernment about change is wisdom. So, what they call resistance is actually you being a responsible steward of stability. I like that one too, actually. You being a responsible steward of stability. Okay, let me stop again. Number 8, people think you're self indulgent when you're actually honoring your sensory needs as valid intelligence. Self indulgent, I think it kind of implies you're excessively pampering yourself. But you're not being excessive, you're being responsive to your senses. Mid spring is when sensory experience becomes rich and available. The flowers are blooming, the air is warming, the earth is softening, and everything becomes pleasurable to the senses. And you're tuned into that same sensory richness. Your senses, they tell you what you need. So when you prioritize comfort, pleasure, and physical satisfaction, you're not being weak. You're honoring the wisdom of your body, of your temple. Your senses are sophisticated instruments that tell you when you're safe, nourished, and resourced. And ignoring them, they disconnect you from embodied intelligence. Tending to them keeps you, however, aligned with the physical reality. The people who call you self indulgent, they probably distrust pleasure and think that discipline requires discomfort. They probably learned to override sensory signals and judge people who haven't. While you know that your senses provide accurate information about what you need. So, what they call self indulgent is actually you practicing the embodied awareness they've lost. Number 9, people think you're boring when you're actually finding depth in simplicity and repetition. So, I think boring kinda suggests that you lack interesting qualities, like you ain't got nothing fun about you, but you're not boring. I think you're just more so content with simplicity, like the simple things, because I see mid-spring as a season and a time frame that doesn't need really drama. Instead, it needs steady conditions and reliable patterns and peaceful development, and you probably appreciate those same qualities, so you'll probably find richness in simple pleasures, a depth in routine, and a satisfaction in predictability, which is not boring. I think that's mature appreciation for what sustains life. You see, you don't need constant novelty to feel engaged and feel like, "Ooh," you can eat the same good meal, walk the same beautiful path, enjoy the same comfortable chair, and find satisfaction in that repetition. You'll notice subtle variations and you develop deeper appreciation through the familiarity, which is not boring. That's the capacity to find depth where others only see the surface. So the people who call you boring, they usually need some external stimulation to feel alive, and they can't imagine being satisfied with just simplicity. They may think that excitement requires novelty, when you know that depth comes from sustained attention, not constant change. So what they call boring could actually be you having the capacity to find richness in what's already present. Number 10, people think you're greedy when you're actually building security through resource accumulation. You see, greedy, it suggests that you're taking more than you need at others' expense. But I don't think you're hoarding selfishly. I think you're building reserves because mid spring is when plants are building the resources they'll need to flower fruit and to survive less abundant times. And you'll do the same. You'll accumulate resources not to deprive others, but to ensure your own stability and ability to be generous from abundance. You see, you understand that security, it comes from having enough. So you'll save, invest, and build reserves because you learned that resources don't always freely flow. So having enough creates the foundation from which you can be generous. You can't give what you don't have, right? Building your own security first isn't greedy, it's responsible. So the people who call you greedy usually have a different relationship with resources, and they may not understand your need for abundance to feel safe. They may think that wanting more than minimum is excessive. When you know that building surplus creates stability for yourself and everybody connected to you, like you get the bag, they got the bag too, in a way, like if they need something, you got them. So, what they call greedy could actually be you creating a foundation of security from which real generosity actually becomes possible. So, the bottom line is if you're a Taurus sun, you're not stubborn, lazy, or materialistic. You're a mid spring specialist. You're built for stabilization, source cultivation, sensory wisdom, and the kind of patience, intelligence that builds foundations strong enough to support sustained growth. So, what people call your negative traits are actually sophisticated strategies for the season you were born into. You're not here to constantly move or to move fast. You're here to provide stability and to demonstrate that depth comes from sustained presence. You're not here to transcend physical reality. You're here to honor embodiment and show that pleasure and comfort are forms of wisdom. You're not here to abandon what works for just the sake of novelty. You're here to build what lasts and to protect what matters. You see, the people who get you, they understand that your steadiness isn't stubbornness, it's reliability, that your pace isn't slowness, it's thoroughness, that your sensory awareness isn't materialism, it's embodied intelligence, and that your consistency isn't resistance, it's the commitment that makes meaningful creation possible. You see, the people who don't get you will keep asking you to move faster, to change more, to want less, to lighten up. Let them. You've got more important work to do, like maintaining the stability, sensory, wisdom, and patient cultivation that builds foundations strong enough to support everyone else's growth when the ground inevitably shifts beneath them.